So, what's the secret to lasting happiness no matter what? What's the purpose of life? I mean, these are questions I've pondered since I was a little boy, and they're questions I still look to answer. Thankfully, I had a chance to learn from one of the highest spiritual teachers ever. Number four on the Watkins list of 100 most influential speakers, a man named Eckhart Tolle, who wrote the book, The Power of Now. And Eckhart said, the whole purpose of your life is to awaken. What's awakening? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's rock.
Here's your host, Matt O'Neill.
So I just got back from a 4-day retreat with Eckhart Tolle. If you don't know who Eckhart Tolle is, he wrote the revolutionary book, The Power of Now. He then followed it up with what I think is an even better book called A New Earth. On the Watkins list of 100 most influential spiritual people in the world, the list is the Pope, the Dalai Lama, number 3 is Oprah Winfrey, and number 4 is Eckhart Tolle. Last year, he was number 3. Oprah's jumped him this year. But this guy is an awakened being. He's enlightened. And what that means is that he no longer gets worried about like inconsequential things like being anxious or upset or angry at people, because he's connected with the inner being, which is what he calls it, consciousness. And with that connection, he's connected with God at all times. This means that no matter what happens in his life, he is deeply peaceful and deeply centered. Well, this is why I wanted to go see this guy. Like, I've read his books multiple times. The Power of Now was way above my head when I read it 10 years ago. I've reread it. I understand it more. New Earth, I've listened to on audio multiple times. I just freaking love that book. And I wanted to go see this enlightened being. I wanted to just be in his presence. And it was incredible. So you're going to learn today what I learned flying out to Huntington Beach, California, and sitting right with Eckhart for multiple days and just taking in everything he had to say. This conference was called The Spiritual Guide to Conscious Manifesting. And he started out the conference by saying, all humans are great at manifesting. Everyone is manifesting all the time. Most of us are completely unconscious to what we're manifesting. And what this means is that everything that's in your life, not everything, but just about everything in your life is there because you've chose it to be there. You've manifested it. The job that you have, that's the job that you manifested. The friends that you have, those are the friends that you manifested. The money in your bank account, the exact bank account balance is the bank account balance that you've manifested. So, I think the first step, he talks about the first step of awakening, the first step of enlightenment is recognizing that you are creating just about all of your reality with your thoughts and emotional signatures and your frequency. Before that point of recognition that you're manifesting, typically we live in a victim world where we think things are happening to us, that, bad things are happening to us. Other people are the cause of our problems. It's the government. It's the economy. It's the interest rates. It's because of that boss, or it's because of mom, or it's because of dad, or it's because of that, bad circumstance that happened. All of those are the reasons that I can't be successful and happy. Well, when you wake up from that illusion, and it is a complete illusion, I lived it. I lived it until I was 25 as a victim, thinking that circumstances were outside of my control. And then I had an awakening at age 25 through 2 books. The first was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. In that book, Napoleon Hill basically said the same thing Eckhart is saying, which is your thoughts are creating your entire life. And I said, man, well, if my thoughts are creating my entire life, all I need to do is focus on my thoughts and make them better and more positive, and I'll have a more positive life. And then the second book was actually a movie, It's called the movie The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And then I then read the book because the movie was so good. And it was the same thing. It was about the law of attraction. Well, the opening talk, Eckhart says when he was 17, he had a very similar awakening to me at age 25. He was given 6 books by somebody. I think he said somebody was staying with them and she just left these 6 books and said she'd come back and get them another time. And she never came back. They were written in the early 1900s in German, so I couldn't read them. But in those 6 books, as a 17-year-old, Eckhart learned the exact same thing, that his thoughts and his emotional frequency was attracting everything in his life. And so as a young man at 17, he said, I'll just improve my thoughts and I'll improve my emotions and I'll think about what I want and I'll attract what I want to me. And he did. And it worked. He attracted a new home and he attracted a new career and he started to have nice things and make money and life was going really well. But then it wasn't. And this is, so he calls that first awakening where you recognize that you're not a victim and that you are actually a manifestor creating your whole world. He calls that step 1 of awakening. And for me, my personal story is step 1 lasted for about 10 years. You know, from age 25 to 35, I just was on a path of manifestation. I said, I'm going to manifest the money I want and the wife that I want and the children that I want and the house that I want. And I did all of those things. I had a vision board. I wanted a boat. I manifested a boat, the exact boat I wanted. I had health goals and fitness goals, and I manifested all of those. And the problem, so the reason it's step 1 is that typically we have to go down this path of chasing external circumstances for happiness to find out that happiness isn't there. But you can't skip this step. You can't go from victim thinking everything's happening to you and that you're not the cause of everything in your life to enlightened, where you recognize that at your core, you're connected with God. You need the step 1, which is to recognize that you're not a victim and that the circumstances and people and situations in your life are primarily there because of your thoughts and your emotional signatures. And I'll break it down. This is a really important step. And if you're listening, I want you to really understand how this works. Let's say you've got a lot of anger and resentment, which is what I had when I was in my early 20s and in my teens. With this emotional signature of anger and resentment, I then had angry and resentful thoughts. And so, if somebody were to say something critical of me, I would immediately get defensive. And then my actions would be like aggressive. And because of my aggressive actions, then other people would be aggressive back towards me. And then there would be conflict. And then they would do something to harm me because I had risen my aggressiveness. And then I would feel like a victim to this person and I would think I was innocent. But, what happened is the initial thing was the emotion of anger was pretty strong in me. And then what came from it was angry and resentful thoughts. And then from my angry and resentful thoughts, like imagine this, like the emotion is the roots of a tree. And then the thoughts are like the trunk of the tree. And then the actions or the words that I say are like the branches of the tree. And then what other people do based on my actions or the results I get are like the fruit of the tree. So my results ended up being people not, being nice to me and then me getting victimized. So because I thought I was a victim in my angry and resentful ways with this thinking, I was producing fruit in my life, circumstances that proved to me that I was a victim and that people were harming me. But the reason that it was all because of me was because the initial roots of my tree were angry and resentful, and my thoughts were, and then my actions were, and then that, of course, was the fruit. So if you have got, like, let's say fear or anxiety, if fear or anxiety, this thought that things could go wrong is in your roots, well, then, your thoughts will be kind of, well, what's going to go wrong next? This could go wrong or that could go wrong. And then your actions will be super protecting, and you'll always be protecting yourself from what could go wrong. But because you're so hyper focused on what could go wrong rather than what could go right, the fruit of your actions, which you actually attract, is things going wrong. And so then it proves that your initial thought about being fearful was right. Like, oh, I had a reason to be fearful because look, the fearful thing I thought was going to happen did happen. But little do you know, this self-perpetuating cycle, you're actually creating the things that you're afraid of with the emotional signatures and the thoughts of fear and anxiety. So, so if this is mind-blowing to you, it was to me at age 25, and it totally awakened me on step one of awakening. And I said, okay, well, I don't want anxious and fearful fruits anymore. I don't want angry and resentful fruits anymore. I want loving and positive and happy and like harmonious, peaceful fruits. And so I started to really be super, super mindful of what I was feeling in my body. Is it peaceful? Is it loving? Is it harmonious? And then from that feeling of peace and harmony and happiness and joy, then my thoughts would be peaceful and harmonious. And then in the same exact situation, somebody could criticize me or say something not so kind. And in my really beautiful mind, in my beautiful state, I would respond with compassion. And, the whole situation wouldn't escalate. They would say something unkind, like this can happen today. Someone could criticize me today. And hopefully I'm in such a beautiful state in my mind that I see that they're suffering, because if someone is criticizing, I know that their mind is angry and resentful like I was. And so I just respond with love and kindness and would say, oh, I'm so sorry. Obviously I've done something to offend you. I really, would never want you to feel that way. Let's work on this together. And it's like not inauthentic. It's truly authentic. I don't want them to feel bad. And if I did something that triggered them, I don't want them to be triggered. I want them to be happy. And so then my fruits end up being this person's like, oh, no, that wasn't you. It was obviously a mistake or something like that. And it totally de-escalates. In fact, then they go out of their way to help me because I'm loving them and like peaceful with them. And and then all of a sudden the fruits of my life became really loving and peaceful. So, okay, well then what happens? Well, from age 25 to age 35 for me, and for Eckhart from age 17 to age 29, we both manifested a lot of success. And, but after, I had the children and the beautiful wife and the really nice house and a great career, but I still wasn't happy. In fact, what happened is I manifested a huge career with lots of people that were reporting to me and all this responsibility. And then children are so much responsibility. And then being a great husband is so much responsibility. And now this big house to take care of and clean and the yard and all that, all this responsibility, I was like cracking under the pressure. I'm like, I thought this was going to make me happy. I thought all this stuff that I was going to manifest, that exactly what I thought I wanted to make me happy was going to make me happy. But really, it's just added a ton more stress and a ton more problems. And then I started to have immense back pain, like crazy back pain. Like I couldn't even walk. My back was so painful. And that was like me cracking under the pressure because I was actually chasing the wrong thing. I was chasing the external goals. And that's great because that suffering is the path now to the second awakening. Eckhart had a little bit of a different situation. He cracked in a different way. He had a complete psychotic breakdown and ended up sleeping on a park bench for like 6 months or something like that, like a long time. He just completely, his mind got to such a high point of suffering that it completely cracked. But it cracked open and he had an immediate awakening to truth. And the truth was that he was connected to God on a soul level, which we can feel within, and that all the stuff his mind was creating, all these ego thoughts about needing more and needing to succeed, and all of that was a giant illusion. And for Eckhart, at age 29, he had a complete awakening and his ego died. And he became enlightened and just started to live from his higher self, from his connection with the divine, with all that is. I I wasn't so lucky, um, but of course, I'm extremely lucky. It just works different for all of us. For me, it's been more gradual. So when I was 35, I get all this back pain, and I was in this intense suffering from the back pain, and then I was led to a book, and the book was called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And John said, your back pain is not from anything physical. It's because there's an immense rage, incredible anger within you that you're suppressing. And it usually happens in the years between 30 and 45, where your responsibility hikes up to a really high level and you're super angry at all of your responsibility. And so while you love your kids, and I loved my kids immensely, you're angry that you have to take care of them every single morning and every single night, and that you don't get a break. And he's like, and while you love your career, and I was passionate about my career, he's like, you're angry that it's so busy and so much demand. And because you love your wife, but you're kind of angry that you have to be a great husband. These things aren't things that you're going to admit to yourself that you're angry about. And so you suppress the anger because you don't want to feel it. You don't want to admit that you're really actually angry, that you don't have any freedom anymore. And then when you suppress that anger, it gets lodged into your body. Michael Singer calls this a samskara. And eventually, all that tension of suppressed anger then manifests as physical pain. And it could manifest, Dr. Sarno said it could manifest in disease. So then I started to go on a path of healing from age 35. Now I'm 43. So over the last 8 years, I've said, okay, obviously manifesting this giant life was not the path to happiness. What is? And so then I've been on a spiritual quest. And this is why I went to go see Eckhart Tolle, is to learn from him. Okay, so let's talk about the second awakening. So Eckhart describes that absolutely everything is consciousness. Everything is God. And in the first part of the book of John in the New Testament, it says something along these lines. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was God. So in the beginning, before there was any planets or people or stars or suns or anything like that, there was just God. And then what's the first thing that God created? God said, let there be light. So before he created any planets or people or animals, he created light. But what is light? According to Eckhart, he wasn't talking about the light of the sun, because there wasn't a sun. He hadn't created the planets or the stars or the suns yet. Jesus then says, I am the light of the world. So Jesus is light. And then Jesus in another part of the Bible says, you are the light of the world. So you are the light. Jesus is the light. You're the light. I'm the light. All of us are the light. So the first thing that God created was consciousness, which is awareness. And that is us. So absolutely everything comes out of awareness. And, Eckhart said, once you can feel this consciousness, this awareness within you, you start to notice it in everything. Like the way that water, when it's frozen, turns into ice. He said consciousness that's kind of in a frozen state could be a rock, or it could be a chair, or it could be a table. We know from science that a rock or a chair or a table is not actually solid. It's just, atoms that are moving at ridiculously high speeds that are super dense. But 99.999% of that rock, table, and chair is made up of nothing, because the atoms are made up of nothing. They're just fast-moving molecules. So all of these things are consciousness. They all have the light within them. And then plants, of course, are a bit more conscious. Animals are more conscious than plants. We can tell that. You can tell that your dog has feelings, and when you look in your dog's eyes, and you can feel that your dog loves you and that you love your dog. And then humans are the highest consciousness in the universe. And so, but there are some humans that are not awake humans. So they're less conscious. They're run by the ego, which is these thought patterns that are kind of animalistic. That anger and resentment I was talking about. Well, this is an animalistic resentment that if somebody did something wrong to me, I want to punch them in the face. That's an unconscious way of living. And so the majority of the world, like 70, 80%, according to David Hawkins, is living in an unconscious state. The majority of humans are living in an unconscious state. So there's only about 22% of humans that are awakening, but that's actually growing. And, David Hawkins has calibrated this using his muscle testing research. And it's the number of people that are getting out of ego and are starting to awaken is growing as time goes on. And it's the highest right now that it's ever been. Eckhart Tolle's new book, or the book, A New Earth, said that we're in a dawn of awakening of human consciousness. And that's actually our mission here. The whole reason we come to Earth is to awaken. Like that's why we're here. We're here to awaken out of the egoic spell, which is like sleeping. When we're kind of like consumed by the ego, Eckhart calls it the pain body. When we're in all this pain, mental anguish, our consciousness is dreaming. It's dreaming an illusion of pain. And then when we awaken out of that illusion and recognize that we're actually connected to all that is, that at our core, we're the same consciousness that's in every other human, and that's in God, and that's in the rocks, and is in the air. Once we start to feel this connection to everything, we are in states of peace and bliss and happiness. And this is called enlightenment. I know this is a huge topic, but this is what I'm passionate about. This is the good mood revolution. And once we manifest the life of our dreams, and you get the car that you wanted and the house that you wanted and the family that you wanted, and you find that you're still not happy all the time, the only next move is to move to the second stage of enlightenment, which is what we're talking about right now. It's starting to wake up from the dream of the ego. So Eckhart explains your only job is to awaken. And he recommends to do this, we go beyond the thinking mind. So, meditation. He said, take a deep breath. Like put your awareness on the breath coming in. Put your awareness on the breath going out. Feel your heart beating. You may want to put your hand on your chest and feel your heart beating. Your senses bring you into the present. So if you can feel air on your skin, that's your sense of touch. If you can concentrate on your breath and feel it going in and out of your lungs, that's bringing you into the present. Because when we're focusing on some sensation, we are focusing on something in the present. And our senses bring us into the present, which is where God lives and where consciousness resides. Our thoughts are always about past and future. So the ego always lives in the mind, which is thinking about what happened in the past or planning for what we're going to do next in the future. The ego cannot live in the present. So the doorway to enlightenment is the present moment, and we get there by focusing on the senses. Eckhart also talks about once we become present, and so for me, I'll focus on a few breaths. Then he said you can actually feel the life force pulsing through your veins. And I love this. I love when I feel the life force pulsing through my veins. If you get really still, you can feel your life force pulsing through your hands. If you don't feel it, then hit pause and do 30 jumping jacks, and then sit back down and turn this back on. And after you've done 30 jumping jacks, just sit there in silence and feel your hands. What you're feeling is your consciousness that's that is lighting up this body, and this is your connection to all that is that life force that's pulsing through in you. That is not your thoughts. That is what Eckhart calls the deep I. The deep I is your true self. It's not concerned with losing your job or what's going to happen or anxiety or anger, getting revenge or any of these things. The deep I is your higher self. And so the ego is constantly worrying about these things. Like, what happens if something goes wrong in my career? Anytime you find yourself stressed or worrying, take a deep breath. Become very still, become very present, maybe do 30 jumping jacks if that's what helps you feel this consciousness pulsating through you. And then just like connect into that consciousness, because your consciousness knows all will be provided. Your consciousness also knows that you can manifest anything, that you have infinite potential and infinite creativity. And this gives you tremendous confidence. So anytime you're feeling unconfident, you're connected to the fearful small ego. And if you want to have confidence, then just connect into the deeper part of your being. Now, Eckhart said, of course, even as we are enlightened, we still have challenges. I'm not saying I'm enlightened. My favorite person who talks about enlightenment is Byron Katie, because she says, I don't know what enlightenment is. She said, I just know, am I enlightened to this moment or not? Are my thoughts harmonious and peaceful and joyful and happy right now, or are they not? If they're happy and peaceful and joyful, I'm enlightened in this moment. If they're not, I'm not in this moment. I think that's a super accurate, depiction of what it means to be enlightened, because at any time we could tailspin into egoic fear. So enlightenment's nothing to achieve anyway. It just makes you happier to be happy. So Eckhart said, hey, we're still going to have challenges, but when you live in the present and free of the ego harmful thoughts, blessings start to show up, blessings you didn't even ask for. Reality can be challenging. Eckhart was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. And he said, if you resist it, then you're going to suffer. And obviously, he didn't talk a lot about the diagnosis, but he did talk about it for a few minutes. And he said, obviously, I was surprised and I was shocked. And I didn't think that, he said, I thought cancer was something that came to people who had a lot of emotional issues and stress. I didn't think it was something that was coming for me. And he had an operation, and they took part of his colon. And then he also just worked on presence. He said, I gave myself my own chemotherapy. I spent so much time in presence every day. So now he's 2 years past and he didn't need chemo, the operation, and then him just focusing on being present and connecting to that center of peace within him. So far at this point has healed him. But that was a challenge. That was a challenge for him. He did use affirmations. He said he used affirmations about health and to really guide his mindset to one of healing and health, because he wanted to live as long as he could. But he also said he was at peace that if he didn't. He said he knows he's done what he came on earth to do, but he wants to be here if he can, because he's really enjoying his life. Okay, so that was day one. On day two, I woke up and I said, okay, that was a huge talk last night. What is my big takeaway? And my big takeaway was that I needed to get back into my meditation practice. It could just be as small as 5 minutes. So I was meditating every morning for like 25 or 30 minutes last year. And I did that every day for 6 months, and I just kind of got burned out with it. And I wanted that 25 or 30 minutes back to do other things. And so I just stopped completely. But after hearing Eckhart talk about how Awakening 2 is really connecting with this deeper sense of ourselves, I said, even if it's just 5 minutes a morning, I'm going to feel myself breathing, put my attention on my heartbeat, put my attention on this pulsating energy within me, and just disassociate from these egoic thoughts. And so I'm going to start my day. And so that was my big takeaway. And I have, it's been a few days now. Every morning I've meditated for a few minutes and it's felt really good. So let's get into some of his teachings on day 2. He said, we really want to go deep. We want to find what Jesus calls the rock to build our house on. Jesus says when you have a connection with God, you are building your house on rock instead of sand. And this deep this deeper sense of I am, like your true connection to all that is that rock. It's that peace that's within you. It's the peace that passes all understanding. It's the kingdom of heaven within you. And so when we're going deep into that deep rock of our consciousness, what we think are our problems really aren't problems, because we can manifest anything we want to. And we can also reconceptualize anything, even things that seem terrible, like a cancer diagnosis. Like God is infinite intelligence and you're eternal. So you're going to continue, your consciousness will continue to live on after this body. There is a plan, even with Eckhart getting this cancer diagnosis. He had peace knowing that if it was his time, it was his time. And that wasn't all that was, because he's eternal. So awakening stage 2, drive your sense of self from the deep I. Eckhart quoted the Bible again. He said, Jesus calls this the fullness of life. You want to transcend this world. Your ego doesn't achieve this. You want to discover the dimension that's within. And as you do, like coincidences started to show up. What you need is just there. Like the universe, God just provides for you. He goes into another quote. He says, set your mind on the kingdom of heaven and all things that you need will be added onto you. And this was kind of an interesting thought, because before, when I was in my 20s and I was manifesting, I felt incomplete because I was manifesting from the ego. I felt like, oh, I need the success. I need the money. I need the house. I need the family. And then I'll be complete. It doesn't work that way. And obviously I had suffering from trying it that way. But after you try it that way and fail, well, you then can get to this stage 2 where you connect with your deeper sense of who you are. And when you're connected into your consciousness, the deep I, as Eckhart calls it, this connection with all that is, when you're feeling in your body and you're not thinking with your mind, you already have the fullness of life. You're already complete as you are. And then when you manifest whatever you create, like if it's a vacation to Hawaii, you don't need it, but it's just added onto you. And I thought that was really beautiful. And he said, what would it feel like if you had what you wanted? So think about some things you want to manifest in your life. Maybe it is. Maybe you want to move to Hawaii. Maybe you just want to live in Hawaii and have all this money that comes to you every single month without you having to work for it. And you get to be at the beach all the time. If that's like your dream, let's just pretend it is. Then manifesting, you just feel like, what would it feel like to have that? And then you just act as if you have it. Well, the feeling of that satisfaction of having that is the reward, because you don't really want to be in Hawaii. You really want to feel what it feels like to be there, because everything that's happiness comes from within you. It doesn't come from outside of you. But even if you were to achieve that thing and you thought it was going to make you happy, eventually you could get to Hawaii, and after 6 months of not having a job and not having anything to do and playing all the golf and surfing all that you wanted, you would get bored. And then you'd say, well, now I'm kind of bored. I'm stuck on this little island and I miss my family. And, now you have a new challenge. So it's not really Hawaii. It's not really the goal. It's the feeling within that we're seeking. And so that feeling within is this connection with the deep I. That's ultimately the whole conference was just about this, that happiness is going to come from within, and it's going to come from getting out of your mind and into your connection with your deeper sense of being, with this consciousness, with this light of the world that's within you. All right, so I'm going to go into a couple other notes that I had put some stars next to. One of my favorite stories he told was from a Bible story that I had not heard yet about Martha and Mary. All right, so this is Luke 38:42, and it says, "Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village, where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks." Eckhart said, like, imagine she's making lunch and preparing a meal for Jesus and Mary and her to have. And so Martha comes to the Lord and says, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." Uh, I love this story, and Eckhart talks about why this story is so beautiful. Martha's busy doing. She thinks the important thing is to prepare the meal, to make the house right, to set the table, and to do all these things in the external world. And Jesus corrects her and says, "No, none of that matters. What really matters is what Mary's doing. Mary's connecting with God." And so Eckhart said this story is really a story about the two parts of your being. Martha, being the ego, is concerned with doing things that keep you surviving, like making lunch and eating and taking care of your job and your kids. The Mary is the other part of you, which is your being. And your being is connected with God. And that is the more important part, because it's the only reason we came here to earth, was to transcend the ego and awaken. That is our only job. And so we still are alive humans, and we still have to go to work and provide for our family and make dinner and give the kids baths and change diapers. And all that stuff is great. That's the Martha, that's the doing. But Eckhart said, how can we merge our Martha and Mary? How can we bring conscious awareness to the doing? That's our job. Our job as we're doing, as we're making lunch, as we're preparing the meals, as we're going to work, is to be connected with our being. And when we're connected with our being, we're connected with the present moment, and we smell the flowers. We see our neighbor and we stop and we say hi. We ask how they're doing in a sincere way, not because we think it's the right thing to do, but just because we are so present and loving, and we're in our Mary nature, that all of a sudden we're having a great time in life. And we're not all caught up like Martha, doing many things, but not being happy. And I think this story is really the essence of the whole conference. And it's my biggest takeaway, is that I still have things to do, but I want to do them in a connected, happy, conscious way. I don't no longer want to do them in a frustrated, stressed out way. So the next time you find yourself stressed, just know you've gone full on Martha. You're so caught up in the doing and the ego stuff and the thoughts about what to do next and what happened last and then what you still have to do, that you've totally forgot to be. And just shift to Mary. Take a few deep breaths. Feel the energy of consciousness, of the light within you, flowing within you. Set your mind down. You don't need to think. We really never need to think. What's within you, the God within you, is infinitely intelligent. Like, that consciousness within you is beating your heart. It's growing your hair. It's fixing your cuts. It's regulating billions of cells at the same time. The consciousness that is who you really are is infinitely intelligent. You do not need to think with your small ego mind. It will tell you exactly what to do. And the more that we connect with this, the more peaceful we are, the happier we are, regardless of what happens in life. And I couldn't be more thankful to Eckhart Tolle for having this conference and for bringing these great teachings to me. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion as much as I've enjoyed discussing it with you. I know it's ridiculously deep, but I mean, shoot. If all we do is decide to be more Mary and be more connected with the infinite intelligence and the God within us, our connection to God. And I want to make that distinction before we wrap up here. You are not God. It's like a ray of sun from the sun. Like a ray of sunshine is not the sun. It's from the sun, but it's not the sun. And that's the way it is with God. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was God. God was first. And then he said, let there be the light of consciousness. We are a ray of sunshine coming from God. Our true nature is from him, but we are not him. And we just want to wake up to this true nature that recognizes the ray of sun of God within us, and then can see that ray of sun of God within every other person and within every other thing around us. And as we do that, there is no problem. We are completely peaceful. We are completely happy. We're completely joyful, regardless of what is happening around us. We know that everything is eternal and that everything is working out in the best way possible. If you have any questions about this, I love to discuss it. Reach out to me. And I hope you guys have the best week ever, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.